Look at that. We're getting there. We're getting there. It's disappeared. The topic, it's not showing on there. No, it's showing on the screen. True humility precedes true bhakti. Our goal true bhakti or pure bhakti, Shuddha bhakti. And an entryway, an essential entryway is true humility, because without true humility, you get something else. You get mixed at best. Now I'm going to read a verse and a little bit from the purport of Canto 3. Canto 3, section of Srimad-Bhagavatam is being narrated from the earlier parts of chapter of Canto. Let's do a little background just so while the technology is blinking off and on. Who's Maitreya and who's Vidura, and how did they meet? A little background is from the first canto of Srimad-Bhagavatam, we find that Vidura was insulted by Duryodhana, and Duryodhana didn't mind insulting anybody, but he insulted everybody. And when he insulted Vidura, it was like 3 strikes and you're out. That's baseball talk. Vidura was his elder brother, generally the younger brother. Personally and materially. And Vidura was regularly advising his elder brother. And one of those advices to his elder brother was to curb the diabolical behavior and said the same. Everyone was saying the same thing. But when the expression goes, he took umbrage. It just because he was insulted, Vidura left because he wanted to do some service, and he wanted to do some service, and he saw there's no service for me here. So he left. There's a nice description of that. Nice paintings, BBT paintings of the same. He left his paraphernalia, his bow, by the door, and rather than going to where Krishna was, at that time Krishna was at Indraprastha, he decided to go on pilgrimage. To go on pilgrimage because he had been so contaminated by the unwholesome association of Duryodhana and the whole situation in Hastinapur, and he wanted to purify himself. It's a nice description. He traveled as many examples of persons going on pilgrimage for a whole year, heading first in a northerly direction, then in a southerly direction, then all the way down around the western side of area outside Dwarka. Yadu dynasty had departed, and many things had happened. So he was already in knowledge of the fratricidal war and the whole thing. Ended up in Brindavan and in a forest. And when you see Uddhava, he even looks like Krishna. Now, if you wanted a picture to blink off and on, it would probably be a good. Uddhava, how nice to see you here in Vrindavan, in the forest in Vrindavan. How fortunate. How are Krishna? How are Balaram? How is Ugrasena? How But intuitively, Vidura, Uddhava already knew. And this very beautiful section where Uddhava goes into trance, samadhi, nirvikalpa samadhi specifically. And he's not aware of anything that's happening around. He goes in complete absorption and thought of Krishna. But because Uncle Vidura is his superior, he wanted to serve his superior. So he struggled to come to external consciousness enough to speak something. And he goes into this long 2-chapter soliloquy describing Krishna, starting with Krishna in Vrindavan, and then moving from Krishna when he leaves Vrindavan, goes to Mathura, and Krishna in. Because Uddhava was with Krishna all this from the time he came to Mathura. He was his constant companion. And he was deeply attached, transcendentally deeply attached. That's a good place to be, attached to Krishna, asakti. And then after that description in response to his question, then Vidura, being in the association of the vastly learned, of course, Vidura is also himself vastly learned, but the vastly learned Uddhava, he had further questions. And those further questions were deferred to Maitreya. He said, not far from here is Maitreya, and I recommend that you go find him and ask these further questions of Maitreya. So he did. And then there's a whole long section where Vidura asked Maitreya about creation and subcreation, and then the universe being filled up by Lord Brahma through descendants of Swayambhuva Manu and the whole lineage of personalities from Swayambhuva Manu and so forth and so on. That's a little structure of what was on the screen, just because we were flashing and filling up space. So, without more detail, Devahuti became the wife of Kardama Muni. It's a very nice description. Kardama Muni had a service assignment from his father, who helped his father, Lord Brahma. And so he accepted that position. He went to the forest to undergo austerities. Lord Vishnu came, standing on the back of Garuda, pretty dramatic. Garuda flapping his wings very gently, and Vishnu standing on his shoulders. And I know what your desire is. You'll have a qualified wife. So he accepted Devahuti as his wife on a principle that when there was an elder son old enough to look after Devahuti, he would return back to his meditation and renounce her. So he did that. Now, there's Lord Kapila, who is an incarnation. Oh, by the way, Vishnu said, "I'll appear as your son." So he's an empowered Shaktivesh avatar, and Devahuti knows it. Imagine being the mother of an avatar Vishnu. And so she placed many questions. All of this is being narrated by Maitreya to Vidura. And then she, Devahuti, wants to know from her son how to overcome my undue attachment, my excessive, obsessive attachment to Kardama Muni. You know, Kardama Muni is a very exalted personality. To be attached to an exalted personality, that's good, but too much. So she wanted to know how to decrease or how to cut that hard knot of affinity for the material portion of her attachment for her husband, leaving the spiritual portion of her attachment. Very similar to Devaki, her questions, similar to Devaki's questions to the Kunti's questions. Kunti's question. Praying to Krishna to remove the material portion of her attachment for her family, leaving the spiritual portion. So like that. It's not easy. Try it. Not easy. It's easy to become attached. And it's a little easier than becoming a transcendentalist to like walk away from the whole thing. But she's not asking to walk away from the whole thing. She's asking that the material affinity, obsessive material affinity, be taken from me, leaving the spiritual portion. So he describes Sankhya, long section, very important section, Sankhya philosophy, in the graduate study level. Just as Krishna describes Sankhya in Bhagavad Gita, Kapila is the graduate study of Sankhya in the Bhagavatam. And then it leads to, where does Sankhya lead to? Where does any system of yoga lead to? It leads to the topmost yoga system. The topmost yoga system is bhakti. So that's chapter 29, pure devotional service. That's our topic. And the purport. A devotee should always try to hear about spiritual matters and should always utilize his time in chanting the holy name of the Lord. Now remember, this is Satya Yuga. It's not Lord Chaitanya speaking in Kali Yuga. In other words, the chanting of the holy name is always. His behavior, devotee's behavior, should always be straightforward and simple. And although he is not envious but friendly to everyone, he should avoid the company of persons who are not spiritually advanced. So this is the topic, and I want to read two parts, two paragraphs from the purport. 9, verse 18. So if you want to look at it yourself, it's fine. 3:29:18. To the Prophet's purport, 2 paragraphs. In order to advance in spiritual understanding, one has to hear from the authentic sources about spiritual knowledge. One can understand the reality of spiritual life by following the strict regulative principles and by controlling the senses. To have control, it is necessary that one be nonviolent and truthful, refrain from stealing, abstain from sex life, and possess only that which is absolutely necessary for keeping the body and soul together. One should not eat more than necessary. He should not collect more paraphernalia than necessary. He should not talk unnecessarily with common men. And he should not follow the rules and regulations without purpose. He should follow the rules and regulations so that he may actually make advancement. Paragraph. There are 18 qualifications mentioned in Bhagavad Gita. He's making reference to chapter 13, verses 8 through 12. And it's identified as knowledge. Qualities lead to knowledge, among which is simplicity. One should be without pride. One should not demand unnecessary respect from others, and one should be nonviolent. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa. So those of you that are familiar with 13 verses 8 through 12, that's how it starts, the first line. Amanitvam adambitvam ahimsa. One should be very tolerant and simple. One should accept the spiritual master and one should control the senses. These are mentioned here and in Bhagavad Gita as well. One should hear from authentic sources how to advance in spiritual life. Such instruction should be taken from the Acharya and should be assimilated. Jnana, Vijnana, knowledge. Prabhupada would use this word Vijnana as realized knowledge. Knowledge that's applied gives some realization. How does realization come? Or how does spiritual advancement come? It requires something that we do, but it also requires the intention of being in the service of exalted souls. I'll say it again. Realization comes as a result of one's action, proper action, and in the association or in the mood of service to exalted souls. Why this and? Because exalted souls have those characteristics, and through the medium of devotional service, those characteristics are passed on from the one who has them to the one who wants them. Sangat sanjayate kama. In our lives, good qualities. Bad association leads to bad qualities. So good association, sadhu sangha, it implies, implicit, is then qualities of the elevated soul get passed on. Service does it, but it's the service in a particular mood. It's not just a behavior. For those who needs true bhakti, that's our topic. Amanitvam adambitvam. The very really sounds familiar. This is the teaching of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Shikshastaka. Experiencing the fullness of chanting. And at the end of the second verse, Mahaprabhu says, reviving out of raga. I don't have any attachment. And then he provides the solution. That's hopefully this. Just an appreciation. The Uttama Adhikari platform, and he's reaching down into
and giving them palatably in a way that they can change, they can lift them to the topmost position. Consistently, gently, expertly, repeatedly, patiently. So he pays demands when necessary, but
Desperately, he got thousands of uncivilized personalities to the position of the topmost platform, the path that could lead them to the perfection. So this is just, in the background, it's some musical instruments, very simple musical instruments, and Prabhupada's very sweet voice. I mean, anyway, the Hare Krishna tune, that's all in the beginning, that's all everybody knew. Now it's not just the Hare Krishna tune, there's a zillion different melodies. And so nice are those melodies. But even the simple Hare Krishna tune, because it was Prabhupada singing, it transformed the hearts of people who heard it. With no musical instruments. He didn't even have cartels. Mridanga, harmonium, nothing. Clapping hands. Anyway, a magician, transcendental magician, transforming sawdust into gold. Oh, this is one example. And I put in red letters that trinad means straw. The more tolerant than a straw in the street. More humble than the straw in the street, more tolerant than the tree. And there's this word amanina again. Not expecting respect from others and being ready to offer all respect to others. When we offer respect to others, we have some expectation. Generally, conditioned souls at least, for sure. I do something nice and I expect a pat on the back. Or something. But with no expectation, that's transcendental. So as spiritual dealings should be like this, the chanting of the holy name should be like this. Here's his follow-up. Raising my hands, I declare, everyone, please hear me. Strings verse on the thread of the holy name and wear it on your neck for continuous remembrance. Humility. There's a very nice place in Brindavan. How many here have been to Brindavan? So one of those places, there's many places to go to Brindavan. And one of those nice places to go to Brindavan is Varsana. Varsana was the ancestral home of Rishabhanu and Kirtida. And it's a place not where Radharani was born, but when Radharani was a young girl, she grew up there during some part of her youth. And when Radharani, not far from Varsana, is a grove of trees, the Kadamba trees. Have you seen Kadamba trees? Kadamba trees have a flower that looks like a golf ball, different colors and very fragrant, but it's a round flower with a little ball. And they're generally very tall trees. And there was a particular grove of trees near Yeah, I got it. I have to back up. It's the drop is this Kadamba Grove. So when Krishna was herding cows, when he was little, he was herding cows. And when he turned 5 years old, he started taking care of the cows. Especially when he was little, he was too little. So he attached the calves attached to him. So he started herding calves. And then they had a big Gopastami, and he started herding cows. He sell cow herds to have festivals. So when he is herding the cows, as they would get closer to Nandagram, he'd climb up one of the Kadamba trees, and towards the upper portion of the Kadamba tree, he'd begin playing his flute. That the sound of the flute wasn't just musical sounds, it was calling the groups of cows. Because Nanda Maharaj's cows were, how many cows? 9 lakh. That's a lot of cows. Ooh. And they were in groups. Some had this color, some had that color, some had faces like a janga. So they had groups. And then Krishna would call the cows by name through his flute. And they were just waiting to hear the sound of Krishna's flute calling them, and they'd move, and their tails would raise, and they'd come running to the Kadamba tree. And then the next, and the next. And some would play hard to get, and so they would wait till Krishna called, and then move. So it was a daily, every day. Feel like every day having breakfast or having your lunch or having it's with the end of the day, Krishna calling them. So that place, the grove of Kadamba trees is much smaller than it was during Krishna's time, but there's still a very nice place. There's a grove of Kadamba trees, and inside, you go inside, there's a nice sadhu who is he's a real sadhu. He's not just one of the give me a donation sadhu. He's a very, very happy person. He has deep love for Krishna. And towards the front part of that grove of trees, there's a set of Krishna Balaram deities commemorating the pastime of Krishna calling the cows in the Kadamba Grove. And if you look closely, next time you go, look closely, just above, there's a verse. Now, the verse is written in Sanskrit, but here's the Devanagari of the Sanskrit, and there's the word trin again. Adadanas trinadantayar idam yache panak panak Srimad Rupa Padambojo Rajoham Syam Bhave Bhave. This is a verse composed by Raghunath Das Goswami in his book called Dhanakeli Chintamani. Raghunath Das wrote a book. He didn't write, he wasn't like a big writer, but he wrote a few books, very wonderful books. This particular book was about Krishna taking tax from the gopis, Dana, Keli, Chintamani. And at the very beginning, the preface of the book, he's offering his respect to Rupa Goswami in this way: taking a blade of grass between my teeth, I repeatedly beg that after birth I may obtain the dust of Rupa Goswami's lotus feet. He's not asking for liberation. He's not asking for anything but in great humility, with a blade of grass between his teeth. So this teaching in Shikshastra and this nice verse by Raghunath Das Goswami teaches us about humility. Because again, our topic is true humility precedes true bhakti. That's our topic. So the painting on the left here, that's from Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because of his humility, when he went to the Jagannath temple, he would see the deity of Lord Jagannath from a distance by the Gruta Stamba. And one day, there was such a crowd that this enthusiastic lady, unable to see above the crowd because she wasn't so tall, she stood on Lord Chaitanya's shoulders. And Govinda is telling, get down. What are you doing? And Lord Chaitanya then chastised Govinda, saying, no, no, no. If only I had the enthusiasm that she has to see Lord Jagannath, then my life would become perfect. And after some time, the lady realized what she was doing. And she was really embarrassed. She got down, fell at his feet, profusely apologized because she was in this ecstatic mood. And this is another painting showing Satsana Goswami with literally a blade of grass in his teeth as a sign of humility, clasping the lotus feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and invited him to give him to instruct. Very simple. Who am I? Now, Sanatana Goswami was a vastly learned Brahmana from a very elevated family, etc., etc. It's not like he didn't know the answer to the question, but he wanted to hear from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu profound yet simple answer, and that's what he got. And then the other is, why do I have to suffer? Tapatrayon unmulanam. Why do I have to suffer the threefold miseries of material existence? Meaning, we don't want to suffer, but miseries from the body and mind, this is the miseries from other living entities, miseries, they come. Why am I subjected to that? Why? Who am I, and why am I forced to suffer? Practical. Those of you that like hearing Prabhupada lectures, I like hearing Prabhupada lectures. And those of you that are like me, you like hearing, how many times did Prabhupada repeat these points over and over and over and over, over and over and over, because people may look very simple, and some of them may be mercenary, but some of them are genuinely humble. And those genuinely humble souls, they, with that mood of humility, they chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. And we do that also. In our mantras, you probably know, there are 3 parts to a Vedic mantra. And one of them is this one, Namaha. Narayanaya Namaha, etc. So the Om is the Bij mantra, the Namaha is who you're offering respects to, and then there's the Namaha. So have you ever wondered the meaning? Here's a very nice description found in Padma Purana. Ma represents ahankar, and na represents negation of ahankar. Thus, by uttering na maha, one negates one's independent attitude. Humility. Independent attitude, namaha. The jiva is dependent on the Lord. He lives with dependence. Therefore, one should completely reject the idea of accomplishing by one's own capacity. Accomplishing anything, what's spiritual or material. Nothing is left to be accomplished by the ability of the Lord. Consigning one's body to the Lord, one should serve him. There's the scriptural reference in case you want to look it up. Bhakti-Vinod Thakur wrote a whole teaching on the 6 limbs of surrender, Sharanagati. And one of the 6 limbs is Dainya. It's an appeal in his songs, Sharanagati songs. Bhakti-Vinod Thakur is appealing to the Supreme Lord for mercy and surrender, Sharanagati. Here's one of the lines. Were you to judge me now, you would find no good qualities. Guna nahi paubi. Then have mercy and judge me not. Cause me to drink the honey of your lotus feet and thereby deliver this Bhakti Vinod. But certainly Bhakti Vinod Thakur knew the science, and he did not just writing nice poetry, classic on his lap, posing before a camera as a pile of books. He was vastly learned and gave those vast teachings in his writings and chanting the holy name with humility and engaging in his life work with humility. Now, with humility didn't mean that he was timid. He was very strong, as strength was needed. Fearless, strong, without examples because of time. It's another topic. But with humility, that means when the position of service to the Supreme Person, recognizing, as it's saying here, there's nothing inside me. You look inside, you're not going to find something good. But don't judge me because there's nothing good inside. Rather, please pick me up in this condition of humility before you and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. Please let me drink the honey of your lotus feet. And he, Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, is similar to the personalities of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. He, all of us, Bhakti-Vinod included, and all of us who are followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we're followers of Rupa and Sanatana. Rupanugas, Sanatana, and Rupa Goswami. And similarly, we can just take so many examples, but here's 2 more examples. There's a nice example of Haridas Thakur. This Murti of Haridas Thakur with a nice little chadra on his head is in Jagannath Puri. And the samadhi of Haridas Thakur is in a certain place in Jagannath Puri where he would chant regularly. And he was so dear to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that every day when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Puri for years, every day after darshan of Lord Jagannath, he'd come take Jagannath Prasad to Haridas and have wonderful, loving exchange with Haridas. Haridas would take just a morsel because of his chanting. He ate very, very little. But the loving exchange between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Haridas Thakur had everything to do with his being fixed completely in the holy name. And not only the fixed in the holy name, but his prachar. Lord Chaitanya glorified him this way. You're exemplary both in achar and prachar. Because of that humility. And because of that humility, he was in pure bhakti, and because of that pure bhakti, he was protected. Without so many nice examples of Lord Chaitanya protecting Haridas. When Haridas Thakur was beaten, he felt nothing. Later, Lord Chaitanya showed him the beat marks on his back, where he had taken the whippings of the constables of Chandkazi upon his back to protect him personally. We're only a little bit left, and I want to go in another direction, but it's the same message. There's a nice description in Mahabharata of Ekalavya, who was an aborigine, who was a forest dweller. He happened to be the son of a king in the forest. Hiranya Dhanu was his father, and Ekalavya was his son. Ekalavya had Kshatriya-like inclinations, but he was an uncultured person from an uncultured situation. And when Ekalavya, heard that Dronacharya was teaching the Pandavas and others in military skill, he went directly to Dronacharya and appealed to him, please accept me as a student. Examining the character of Ekalavya, not his birth, but his character, Dronacharya declined. Because you don't put something very powerful in the hands of someone who doesn't have good character. So he declined. But Ekalavya was very determined, the Mahabharata describes. And so instead of hearing directly from Dronacharya, he went in the forest, made from earth and water, which means mud, a murti of Dronacharya. This is often told in the context of just see how powerful is deity worship, because he worshipped the deity of Dronacharya, not Krishna, but Dronacharya. And through his ardent worship and submission to Dronacharya, he became very, very qualified in military skills, particularly archery. And one fine day, the Pandavas were in the forest, and they saw a dog with 7 arrows in his mouth, so many arrows that went into his mouth simultaneously that the dog couldn't bark anymore. Arjuna was wondering, who did this? Where'd this come from? So he searched the direction the dog had come from, and he found Ekalavya. And he asked Ekalavya, who are you? And he said, I'm the Nishada prince, the son of King Hiranya Dhanu. And I learned this military skill from Dronacharya. And Arjuna was very surprised because Dronacharya had said, Arjuna, you're such a qualified student and disciple that I will make you more gifted than any other military person in the world. No one will be able to defeat you. So Ekalavya, through his worshipping this deity of Dronacharya, developed a skill that even Arjuna didn't have. There was a dog that was barking too much. So he took care of the dog. He 7 arrows in his mouth, so he couldn't bark anymore. Really hurt the dog, but he stopped barking. And so Arjuna went back to Dronacharya and said, you didn't teach me this skill. And there's this fellow, Ekalavya, that said he learned this skill from you. So please explain. Dronacharya said, here's a little nice drawing of the dog with the 7 arrows in his mouth. And the Pandavas, Arjuna examining. So when they took him back, they took Drona. There's Arjuna with Drona, Acharya. And there's the Murti in the background. And Dronacharya asked, who are you? He said, I'm your disciple. And I learned everything from you in this deity form. So Drona said, very well, since you're my disciple, then you have the obligation to offer Guru Dakshin. Yes? Oh, yes. Whatever you want, it's yours. I only want your right thumb. Immediately, the submission, at least one kind of submission, of Ekalavya was he immediately pulled out his knife and cut off his thumb and handed his thumb to Drona. Drona thanked him and left. And Arjuna understood what happened, like many things happened. Drona did the right thing, and the submission of Ekalavya was half submission, submitted to cut off his thumb. But on the other hand, Drona had told him, I won't accept you as a disciple. So he's on one hand acting like a disciple, but on the other hand, there's not any real submission because his spiritual master, his teacher, said, I won't accept you as a disciple. I'm not going to teach you. So there's multiple layers of lessons. And, fitting into the topic, and this is our last slide. True humility proceeds through bhakti. There was no real guru bhakti on the part of Ekalavya, because if it was, that he would have just accepted what he said. But didn't accept what he said. He went ahead and did what he wanted to do. And he got benefit from worshiping the deity of Dronacharya. So there's some benefit went to him. He had skills. But misapplied skill can be very dangerous. That's why Drona asked for his thumb. Now, to summarize, bhakti means, it means service. There are two parts to bhakti: what the mind does and what the body does. Bhakti, this is described very nicely in the final verse of chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita. Bhakti, the topmost stage of yoga, of the rung of the yoga ladder, bhakti itself has the Sanskrit root word bhaj, B-H-A-J, and it then becomes bhakti. Bhaj becomes bhakti. Bhaj, the dhatu, or the root meaning, implies service. Service is the senses. So the senses engage in service. And so that's a behavior. And then there's something the mind does. That's another part of bhakti. The essential is the Madgatain antaratmana, the mind taking full shelter of the personality of Godhead. Antaratmana, antaratma. Madgatena antaratmana, the mind taking full shelter of the personality of Godhead. That's the submission part. That's what the mind does and what the body does. So there's activity, but without that submission to the personality of Godhead, through the medium of the representatives of the personality of Godhead, true bhakti doesn't happen. There can be many persons, that have contact with Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada and Prabhupada's movement, ISKCON, they're engaged in devotional service. But that devotional service that begins may be a shadow of devotional service or bhakti abhas. And we're speaking now about true bhakti. And another reference, the scriptural definition of bhakti given by Rupa Goswami, is where speculation, jnana, speculation, and karma or sense gratification, jnana karma janavratam. But there's the submission to the personality of Godhead. Submission requires humility and requires then, following humility, some service unto that person unto whom I'm submitting. Love. There's the person, there's the activities in relation to the person, and there's the feeling connected with that activity and connected to the person. Just like if you remember that little section from the first paragraph I read, Prabhupada's purport, or the verse from Kapila Dev's teaching, is following regulations without the sense of purpose is not to be done. But how purposeful are we? This is the humility part. How purposeful are we when we're following regulations? It's good to follow regulations. And it's more than good to follow with the right purpose. So what's the purpose? Krishna should be pleased. Very simple. It's love. Krishna should be pleased. The object should be pleased. Not me, but the object should be pleased. The subject, the object, and the relationship of service. The object is to be pleased. It's love. And it proceeds with humility. And then there's something that humility isn't. There's something that humility is. Humility is not low self-esteem. Humility is not feeling badly about oneself. That's not what real humility is. Real humility is respecting the position of the exalted person, and in comparison to the exalted person, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teaching, you look inside, you won't find any good qualities within me. But still, please accept me. And give me access to your holy name, give me access to your service, etc. I like this topic. I mean, I like lots of topics, but I like this topic because we're all of us in the room in different levels and different stages of our spiritual trajectory. We're all engaged in some devotional service. And we would like not to just stay stagnant. We like to have that devotional service become dynamic and exponentially grow and deepen and become profound. And how do you do that? So this is a part of a series, but the initial section of a series, maybe next time I visit Singapore, I'll go to some of the other parts. But the initial part is humility. How can you engage in true bhakti without true humility. Then how do you get there? Sadhu Sangha. Let's see if there's some discussion. I hope this is meaningful to all of you. You're passing the microphone up forward. Anybody would like to speak something? Okay.
Well, I had two questions. I'll start with the first one. You said Kapila Dev is Shakti Avesh avatar.
Yes.
And we know Prathu Maharaj, Narad Muni, even
Yes.
they are also Shakti Avesh.
Yes.
So is it that they are plenary portion? Because with Narad Muni, when we look at him, we look at
Speak slowly.
Narad Muni, when we see him
He's a jiva.
as a
The Kumaras are jivas. Kapila is not a jiva.
Okay. Okay, it's plenary portion, it's Vishnu Tattva. Kapila is Vishnu Tattva and he's...
Yeah, but empowered in a specific way. And invested with the potency of the source of everything to do a certain service. And it can be Jiva Tattva or Vishnu Tattva.
So Narad Muni is a Jiva Tattva.
Yeah.
Even though he's Shakti Avesh.
Yes. Bhakti Shakti.
Shakti Avesh is not very... There are different...
There's differences
Differences
amongst the Shakti Vesh avatars.
My second question, Maharaj, was about humility. Sometimes we still have to be firm in... I won't say firm, but let's say if we are working with devotees, even though we don't have authority, but we have to be clear with our communication, with our position, with our stand of how certain things should be done.
Right.
Though we don't have adhikar, so does it seems to be? I mean, we are. I won't say offending, but are we not being humble in the situation?
Not being humble in what situation?
In a situation where we are trying to be very firm, or not firm, but firm about certain rules, certain practices, certain standards, which we have to follow, and it can come across as being very authoritative. Very.
Are you speaking about your interaction with superiors or peers or subordinates or
Peers.
all the above?
Mostly peers and subordinates. Peers and someone.
Peers and subordinates. Well, being firm has its place. Being very tolerant has its place. Saying something has its place. Saying nothing has its place. Depends on the circumstance and the relationship. A very nice verse, scriptural reference, 17:15 Bhagavad Gita. 17:15 Bhagavad Gita is austerity of speech. In that purport, Prabhupada explains, if you are in the position of a superior, like a teacher, parent, something, then you're in a position to instruct. If you don't have that position, that authority, then you're not in a position to instruct. That's when you may not say something. Or if you say something that's respectful, respecting the peer relationship. Now, how you're going to say that depends on the other person, and the situation. You may not say something at the time. You may say something later. You may ask them a question. You don't have to say nothing, but you're discerning if and when and how to communicate. That's austerity of speech. Now, if supposing someone is a subordinate, then there's still discernment. discrimination about what and how and when. In a private or in a public or in a, it's in the circumstance, the how, the manner, the words, the tone. So much depends upon time, place, circumstance. Somebody sent something to me today. Did I send it to you? Prabhupada being asked by a reporter about boarding an airplane. Did I send it to anybody here? I'll send it to you now, and you can circulate it to others. So, reporter, Swamiji, how come you travel by airplane? So, the position is subordinate, challenging the superior. Prabhupada's answer to the effect, if I traveled by bullock cart, you're traveling by plane to go quickly to hell. If I traveled by bullock cart, I couldn't catch you. Oh, little slap in the face. Because there's insubordination. And, Prabhupada didn't do it like that all the time. There was one time in Los Angeles, some reporter in Los Angeles asked Srila Prabhupada, I saw when they picked you up at the airport, they picked you up in this big limousine. He didn't comment further. I thought Swamis were renowned. Prabhupada said, it wasn't good enough. It should have been a golden car. He wanted to instruct, and in that, he didn't always speak like that to reporters, but sometimes he did, because the person's, without knowing the circumstances, the person may have just been blatantly impertinent and insulting. So, put the person in place. And he explained, because the spiritual master is to be seen as good as God, and you want to offer the nicest thing to God, and so it should have been a golden car. Not like he wanted a golden car, but it was giving some teaching for a person that needed some teaching. Like, humble down a little bit, sir. Well, the answer to your question is it depends. It's appropriate at times to be firm. It's appropriate at times to be soft. It's appropriate at times to be silent. It's appropriate at times to speak later. And then the way that you speak has everything to do with, is my reason for speaking purposeful, and is the purpose being achieved? Something else? Yeah. Behind you.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much. The whole session I was thinking, true humility precedes true bhakti, but what precedes true humility?
I got it.
So thank you. Last line, I think you mentioned the good association, I think precedes. And I was wondering, what precedes good association then? I was trying to get to the root, where it all starts.
Kripa. How does bhakti begin? And when Bhakti Devi decides to bestow her mercy on someone, bhakti begins. At least the potential for bhakti begin is made possible. And what decides Bhakti Devi's mercy? She does. There's no cause. There's no material cause. Noituki apratiyata. That's the scriptural reference is that one. Because it's bhakti that awakens real knowledge and detachment. And how does that happen? Causelessly. A really nice discussion on this topic is in Madhurya Kandambani. You've heard of that book? In a book by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur outlining the 9 stages of bhakti, and he spends a lot of time at the very beginning. How does bhakti begin? Which is what your question is. What's behind? Humility proceeds through bhakti. Sadhusanga invests one in humility. So where does sadhusanga come from? Bhakti Devi invests bhakti in a sadhu and directs them. You go over there. Give bhakti to this person. Yes, ma'am.
I was trying to relate it to the example of Vibhishan, Ravan's brother, So here, I was just trying to understand from his example because he got that, bhakti, and he finally surrendered. He got that humility and surrendered to the Lord. But before that, his association was completely, maybe I think previous birth or whatever he might have had. I was just trying to relate with his example, in that birth, before he met Hanuman, Lord Hanuman, so what situation he was in, completely the association might not have been that great. But how he was able to, practice devotional service amongst those, people who were completely not so devoted to the Lord.
Which personality you're referring to, please?
So it is Vibhishan, who is Ravan, Lord.
Vibhishan, the history of Vibhishan's bhakti goes way back before meeting Hanuman. Way, way, way back. Even before he was born. His father announced, one of your sons will be a great personality. And Vibhishan received the bhakti from his father. Even before meeting Hanuman. He was like that. And extended austerities before he met Hanuman. Extended austerities. And when the benediction was being offered to him, he asked for devotional benedictions. It was inside him already. From his father. And inherit and grew and grew and grew and very gifted.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
This is a pretty practical question.
Fine.
Okay, so at what point do you be humble and when do you speak up? Like, for example, if someone is a really good singer and they
If someone is a good singer.
Yeah, and they say, someone please do kirtan now. And there's someone else who also wants to sing. Do you go up and be like, oh, I think I can do this well, so I should do this? Or it applies to any other service?
All of the above. We want to encourage everybody, not only the good singers.
Okay. So if there's different services and people can take up different things.
Say it again slower, the last part.
Oh, if there's different services and people can take up different things.
Yeah.
Then should someone still speak up saying, oh, there's this one I am good at, so maybe I should do this?
Well, it's nice to do things you're good at.
But if there's someone else also who can do it, but
then you take turns.
Okay.
And a smile.
Is it okay to say you're good at it? Like, this is a hypothetical question.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a good idea. I'm not sure what you're asking. It's not a good idea. Supposing I'm a good singer. I'm not a good singer. Supposing I'm a good singer. That's all I'm going to do. Ask me to wash pots, forget it. Ask me to string garlands, forget it. Ask me to lead kirtan, yes. That's what I do. I'm a kirtanier. And ask me to chant japa, no. I lead kirtan. You know some people like that? I know some people like that. Oh, it's not good to be that exclusive. I'll only do this. It's good to have an attitude of service. And according to different circumstances, this service, that service, the other service. And somebody next to me may not have the gift that God has given me to sing nicely, but let them be encouraged to sing to their capacity. And that's service. So I don't want to deprive them of that opportunity for service. Oh, something, some of everything. You know, that's practical. Did that answer your question or no? Not really.
Kind of. It's more of like, is it okay to say that to someone?
Say what?
That, oh, I am good at this, so give me this.
Well, you know,
We're doing other things. Yeah.
Let's follow the path of Bhakti-Vinod Thakur. If someone asks, you can take up some service, but to advertise yourself as good at something, even if you're good at something, you don't need a sign or a little lapel says I'm a good kirtanier. Okay. Thanks. I see a couple of hands up.
Krishna Maharaj, just want to check in the beginning, you mentioned Vidura left palace.
Hold the microphone a little further away because when it's really close, it muffles the sound.
So Vidura left the palace
Yes.
after he got insulted,
Yes,
but the reason was that he had no service left for himself.
that's right. It wasn't because he was insulted. It was because I'm service oriented and there's nothing for me to do here.
So in that case, he left for pilgrimage.
Yes,
So, and that is pilgrimage, as you mentioned, is for self-purification.
for purification.
So how to understand in this Leela, what we see is he got insulted. Apparently, that's what a person like me is seeing, that he got insulted. That resulted him to realize that the service for him is not there.
No. Because he was insulted, he realized there's no service. It wasn't the insult, but it was just I'm Uncle Vidura. This is my nephew. You're my brother's son, and you're insulting me. So I am meant to help you become a better person, but it's obvious. You don't want to stop being who you are. So that's the no service. It's not the hurt from being insulted. It's the response, get out of here. We should beat you till there's no breath left in your life. And who are you, Sudra, to instruct Kshatriya? Get out of here. No service. Let me go where there's some service. That's the mood. Does that help?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Maharaj,
Thank you.
Trinadapi Sunitena, string this verse on the thread of the holy name and wear it on your neck for constant remembrance.
Yes.
Maharaj, can you please help me understand that statement better? Beyond.
Well, it's an ornament. Flowers on a string, it becomes an ornament. So the ornament of a devotee is that verse. And the thread that holds the ornament is the holy name. So on the thread of the holy name, string this verse and wear it for constant remembrance. For the purpose of the ornament of that Shikshashtaka 3 is remembrance, because it's responsive to nanuraga. I have no attachment, no raga, no affinity for the name. Want to hear something further? Is that okay? Are you looking for some specific feature of that statement? Yes. Yeah. Well, but poetry is like that. It's sweet, and this, in that sweetness is conveying an understanding. So it's not literally, it's figurative, it's poetic. String this verse, that's the pearl that's on the thread, the ornament, the pearl is the verse. String this pearl, this string of pearls on the thread of the holy name, and wear it constantly for remembrance. It's poetry. And always wear it. Keep it with you all the time. Humility. Yeah, something else up front?
What's that?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I got it. I can hear you.
When we actually share this to the other people, Prabhupada also says the scientist did not produce their brain. Krishna gave them the brain. But when we give this argument in general in our discussion, the point which comes is that, yes, Krishna gave the brain, but I had to work. I had to practice. I had to work hard.
Yes.
Now we can say, okay, inspiration came from Krishna. You worked hard. Because eventually, person wants to claim the glory of
the
fruit and the glory of his ability. And he doesn't want to give to Krishna.
Well, we don't generate fruits. Krishna does.
Okay, so that's the understanding.
Because we serve, and Krishna supplies.
If explaining to the common man that your ability which you have is coming from Krishna.
Yeah.
And they feel that they're practicing, they're working hard. That's their glory and their efforts. So how do we explain that part of the equation?
So let me try to understand what you're asking. We agree on a principle, and then over there is a fellow that's a mudha. He thinks the ability that I have is to work hard. So I'm working hard because Krishna gave me the ability to work hard. And so how do we help that person understand, don't be a donkey? We also, devotees, and a response, if I've understood your question properly, we work hard. Look at what Prabhupada did, the service of some number of people in one person. Day and night and night and day and night and the next day and the next day and the next day and the next day. It was like dynamo, but detached, because it's service with love. And where's the limit? No limit. He did everything, regulation-wise, he did everything, but he did, 10 times what a normal person could do. So he wasn't lazy. and would encourage us also to not be lazy. There's a nice little joke about this. Pradumna. Many of you know who is Pradumna. In case you don't know, Pradumna was Prabhupada's disciple that traveled with him almost everywhere, and he was a Sanskritist. He had, in the early days, there weren't many people that knew Sanskrit. Pradumna was excellent Sanskritist, and his service primarily was the synonyms for each of the Sanskrit words, creating in the Bhaktivedanta purports, creating synonyms for each of the verses. And Prabhupada would sometimes describe that a Brahmana is not active intelligent, but lazy intelligent. Then he would say sometimes about Pradumna, you're too lazy. It happened in New York, and I was there when it happened. Prabhupada was angry that, because Prabhupada had been traveling, Pradumna was stationed in New York with the ISKCON press at the time, and he was way behind, like chapters behind Prabhupada. So Prabhupada did his work in half a day, a fraction of a day, which was taking him months, and he couldn't get it done. Said, you're lazy intelligent. Please keep up with me. So he was, chastising his disciple. So, but Prabhupada was very active in so many areas. So many areas. So, to the person that's the work hard, Krishna gave me this gift, so I'm using with the gift that Krishna gave me person. Towards what's the target? What's the goal? What's the objective? Productive activity. Get some reward or some recognition or something. Get something for something. But that's how we advise. Perform your prescribed duty, but you're not entitled to the fruits of your prescribed duty. You're entitled to think of Krishna. That's what you're entitled to. And offer the fruits to Krishna. But it's a credential, but it can also be a detriment. Misapplied. Anyone else? Yeah.
With reference to the discussion of Madhurya Kadambini, Bhakti comes from Bhakti.
Okay.
What is the role of Agyat Sukriti, if any?
Nice question. Do you understand her question? Anybody need an explanation of what her question is? Agyata Sukriti. That's true. So what's the role? It's something that helps me or a potential recipient of Bhakti Devi's mercy unknowingly what is getting Bhakti Devi's mercy. Here's like 3 examples. Supposing somebody's a passerby on the street and they see Harinam party. They may like it, they may not like it. They may be an atheist, but unknowingly they're getting mercy just by hearing the holy name. Or, second example, prasadam. So the prasadam that's been offered to Krishna is a benefit to living entities. Supposing that you feed some fish in a pond. They're fish. They're not thinking, Krishna prasadam. But they're getting spiritual benefit from taking Krishna prasadam. So, unknowingly, or seeing Rath Yatra. Unknowingly, they see dancing and they see what's going on. They don't know what's going on, but they're getting benefit. So Bhakti Devi is being transmitted to those persons through some authorized procedure. And this Bhakti Devi giving her mercy in the way that Bhakti Devi may choose to give her mercy to someone. The medium is one who's carrying that mercy, the devotee, distributing the mercy. Okay. It's 9:00. I think we're going to end. Srila Prabhupada ki, I believe I have some Mahaprasadam from Brindavan. So those of you that need to go somewhere, don't go away yet. Here's a box that has Mahaprasadam from Brindavan.